You have another guest this morning, Adam.
We have Lynn Rogers today, Senator Lynn Rogers from Wichita, Kansas. And good morning to you, Rob.
Good morning.
And good morning, Senator Rogers, a Democrat out of Wichita. And I guess, obviously, topic on the front burner, education, and been busy in Topeka discussing that topic.
Well, half the chambers have been. The House has been doing their job. We in the Senate have not. So
we actually passed out what we hope to be constitutional school finance formula in the House just yesterday, Rob. We had it shot at it on Monday, and it failed on general orders. And yesterday it did pass. It puts about $830 million into schools over the next 6 years. You know, what got us here is the fact that we were unable to fund due to some bad decisions in the legislature over the last few years, and coming out of a recession as far back as 2010, we haven't met our needs to our schools in regard to finance. So this gets us back on track. We put a new funding mechanism in last year when we revamped the tax structure in Kansas, and we get that passed out of the House. What they call final action. So it went to final action yesterday after we debated it. It passed, ready to go over to the Senate, and lo and behold, the majority leader of the Senate, Senator Jim Denning, says we're not going to hear any school finance bill until we have a constitutional amendment that will affect every community in Kansas to take education funding out of the Kansas Constitution and put it in the legislature's hands solely, and take the oversight from the Supreme Court away from the Constitution. He said, until you do that, we're not going to listen to your school finance formula. And I'll let Lynn talk about that because that's on his side.
Well, and we had heard over the weekend that we weren't going to do any bills until we had something to work with on school finance. And so we originally assumed that was the House bill, which we knew they were going to talk about Monday and Tuesday. And so yesterday in the Republican caucus, and of course I'm not a member of that, but they discussed that, and that's where it was announced. And I just think it's a very silly idea at the best. And we had a little bit of this last year where the majority leader was banning us from doing any work, and it really creates a problem because there's a lot of bills that we need to work with the House other than school finance, and those are being held hostage. And I kind of feel we're being held hostage as well. I think the House did what they did, in good faith, and we need to debate it and look at it as well. Of course, the Senate plan, it's been very slow. They didn't start working on that until about 20 days ago, even though we knew about the finance plan, the Supreme Court back in October. But it only puts about $250 million in over the next 5 years. So it's very obviously that would not fit constitutional muster. And even the plan that the House has, there's some debate on that, partly because we haven't talked with the plaintiffs. And that was one of the things I suggested on the Senate floor, is that we sit down and talk with the plaintiffs so we could walk over hand in hand. The House plan is definitely much better than what we've looked at in the Senate. And then not talking about it at all, or not even discussing it, and saying we won't do that until a constitutional amendment that is really the nuclear option. It will do bad things and just even totally disrespectful for the three branches of government. I think that's what's really sad. We also hear from the folks that are pushing the constitutional amendment that it'll protect our rural schools. It won't. The courts are the only ones that have done that, and so I think it's very short-sighted for many of the agricultural groups that are supporting this. They don't understand what it will do to our rural Kansas schools.
So, Rob, on this constitutional amendment, it gives all the funding authority to the legislature, and it says the amendment that they're proposing actually says that the court, all the way up to the Supreme Court, cannot weigh in and judge how we're funding it. It spells it out there. It literally takes out checks and balances that our country is founded on, and as well as our state, away from us. Yeah. So we have, and Lynn briefly talked about the people that are supporting this: Farm Bureau, Kansas Livestock Association, the Kansas Contractors Association, the Kansas Chamber, and one other group that I can't remember.
Yeah, and I've heard rumors here in the building that many of those groups are involved because they've been told that if they want to do business in the Capitol, they've got to do the bidding, from the leadership. So I really do think it's a vacuum of leadership that are making decisions based on what's best for them, not what's best for the state. And I think that's what's so discouraging to me. Being on the Wichita School Board, we had 7 people that were committed to doing what was best for kids. Coming here, we don't have that in the Senate. There are 40 individuals. Many want to make changes because they came in 2016 to do that, but many are here to play the political game, and that's just a really sad commentary on where we're at.
So what's next?
Well,
just keep butting heads, or
we do. Unfortunately, the big changes we made in the 2016 election to moderate the state of Kansas and get it back to the people have still been blocked a little bit by leadership in both the House and the Senate. They're still pretty extreme right, and the majority leader at both, the majority leader on the Senate side, who's obstructing this the school finance, he is an ultra conservative by all means, and has a great deal of power. We talked a little bit. Eber Phelps is running the camera back here. We talked a little bit about how powerful a committee chairman is. If they don't want something like Medicaid expansion, Dan Hawkins, our chairman of Health and Human Resources, has stifled debate on Medicaid expansion this year, even though we did pass it last year and it got blocked by the governor. The majority leader, who controls the calendar, that's the bills that we work up here on both the House and the Senate side, is a very powerful position. Our dog and horse racing bill, it hasn't got a chance above the line or to debate on the floor because the majority leader of the House is not in favor of it. So it's a very powerful position, leadership in both chambers.
Yeah, and I think one thing that we're going to do in the Senate is we have a group of, we call it our Common Ground Caucus, both Democrats and Republicans that are willing to work together. We'll be meeting today and starting some discussions. And I think many of our new moderate Republicans, because the leadership is so conservative, they're often threatened with retaliation. They'll either get a reward or they can be punished. And so that's something they have to consider. But I think many of them are willing to step up and say, let's do the right thing. I think one of the things that's amazing is, in order to pass a constitutional amendment in the House, you have to have 84 votes and you have to have 27 in the Senate. And I'm not sure if leadership has made any kind of a preliminary count, because when I have, there doesn't seem to be enough votes to get to those numbers. Now, of course, people can always flip and switch because of the punishment or the rewards, but I just don't think there's enough wherewithal. Now, maybe in the last session before 2016, before the elections, it could have been done. I don't believe it can be done today.
I don't either. I think on the House side, it takes it takes 84 votes to pass a constitutional amendment, and there's 40 Democrats who will say no to this, and I think at least 5 to 7 moderates that'll join us, and maybe some others will get on board. But there is a great effort throughout some of these groups in the state that are grassroots groups, really, that have a lot of membership that are pushing this, and I don't really fully think they know what they're doing with our Constitution.
Yeah, I don't either. I received some information about fear versus fact and all the things that they had that were facts about how rural schools would be protected and whatnot. Those are all results of the Montoy or the Gannon case. They were not because of the legislature. And anybody that thinks the legislature will fund education adequately just needs to look at our track record for the last 8 years. And if that is any doubt, then you go to block grants, which basically froze funding. But again, there's no reason why they didn't cut that in half. And then what that would do to local school boards is require them to raise property taxes to make up the difference, or to make drastic cuts and increase class sizes. Rural Kansans, farmers, ranchers, if their mill levy goes up for their local school, that's going to be extremely expensive. So I think the Farm Bureau and the rural folks aren't thinking this thing through for long-term effect.
So the work on education funding continues. And Adam, something in your backyard, a week from Friday, the 13th at 1:30, they're going to have the ribbon cutting, dedication of the Bob Grant Bison herd, North Highway 69 here in Frontenac. And I know that was something that Bob Grant worked on for a long time, and they're going to, the buffalo are back.
Absolutely, Rob. Bob did commit quite a bit of his time to making sure and that those buffalo were there in southeast Kansas, and it's great to have them back in their original location. And hopefully this is a very fitting tribute to Bob Grant, who really served the people of Southeast Kansas for a long time and did an excellent job doing it. So we're excited about that. It'll be it'll be Friday the 13th at 1:30 at the Bison Herd.
And the state representative Adam Luster out of Frontenac and his guest Senator Lynn Rogers out of Wichita. We appreciate you chatting with us. And Adam, I'll talk to you again next week.
Yeah, hope to see you in person next week at the radio station, Rob.
Thank you, Rob.
I'll have the coffee on and the door unlocked.
Okay, buddy. Thank you. Good talking to you.
Okay, got it, guys. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks,
And,
Rob. It was a little bit longer this week, but there's a lot to talk about this week. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, everybody that's on the front burner, obviously, wondering what's going on. And, it started off so slow like it had to, but now it's kind of, I guess, gaining some momentum. Hey, did you see old Ted Hesson got Fort Scott's superintendent job?
No, I did not. I'll be damned.
Yeah.
He was at Meridazine, now he's going to Fort Scott, huh?
Yeah, of course, he was from there and everything.
Yeah, that'll make his family happy. His wife or ex-wife still there in Frontenac, isn't she, with the kids? Or he's got the kids.
Yeah.
But,
No, she's got the kids. They're still up at Frontenac going to school there. So
that'll make it a lot easier.
Interesting. They announced that yesterday. So he gets closer to home, I guess.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Closer to the X.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Hey, I appreciate it, guys. Get to work.
Okay, we'll do it, Rob. Thanks, buddy.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Bye-bye.